and welcome to episode 137 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. Of course, I'm Sigmund Judge, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Mr. Devon Dundee. It's an exciting week for many, many reasons, but before that, we had a little bit of listener feedback from last week.
Yes, listener Stuart Crabtree wrote in and asked, what is titinus? This was something that you said last week, Sigmund, and thought it was an entertaining question. So do you want to address the titinus debate?
Absolutely. Titinus is me making a boob of myself on the last episode. What I meant to say was tinnitus. The interesting thing is, I think there is something named titinus rather than tinnitus that's to do with overexposure to titanium.
Oh.
So there might be something there, a link somewhere. But yeah, basically a mispronunciation. Hopefully this isn't something that listeners are going to keep score of, because there's a fair few on this podcast.
Yeah, here's what I'll say to Stuart. It's a great catch, and you were a good sport about it, but please don't start tracking these because I know I make plenty of them as well.
Let's talk about titanium, because I've got a funny feeling we may have both ordered us some titanium.
Yeah, I guess I might be at risk of titinus, Sigmund, because I'm exposing myself to even more titanium now. I'm replacing my iPhone 15 Pro Max in black with my iPhone 16 Pro Max in black. That's what I ordered. I was able to get in pre-orders and make it for release day and all that fun stuff. It was actually a pretty smooth process. Did you end up pre-ordering?
I did. I still haven't decided whether or not this is going to be a phone that I keep, because I'm really, really happy with my iPhone 15 Pro Max in natural titanium. But I have switched things up, and I'm not too sure if there's something in the air, because everyone that I've seen, other than I think Federico Vitici, those that have shared their pre-orders, have gone with black titanium, as have I. There's something really nice about the finish this year. I also like how it hides the sapphire button for camera control. It just makes it look like the phone is just one piece again. You're black every year, though, right?
I'm all black everything every year. Very boring. I think I went silver maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was fine for a year. But yeah, all my devices are whatever version of black that Apple offers on that particular line. That's what I'm going for. So I've also got my jet black aluminum Apple Watch Series 10 on the way. So those should both be arriving on Friday. I've never upgraded my phone and watch at the same time, so I've got to figure out the process for that if anyone has any tips.
Of course, yeah, black is a little bit boring, but I'm feeling it. Do you go caseless? That is a good question.
I've been going caseless for quite some time now. I usually keep a case around just in case I have something going on that I want to be more careful, but I haven't ordered any cases yet as of this point. What about you?
I have ordered 2 cases, both of them being the silicon type, which I'll be honest, I am not a big fan of considering the wear on my last case, but I did pick up both the fuchsia and ultramarine cases. And surprising to me, I think, is that I actually prefer the fuchsia case. I think it just adds a little bit of pop that the Pro phones are lacking this year. However, I don't know if that's going to be my day-to-day. What I really want is a case that can work like a traditional camera strap. So a lot of cases have 2 inserts at the bottom where you can hang it around your neck, bottom down. What I want, though, is a case that basically holds the iPhone in landscape mode. So then you can just lift it nice and quickly. Your finger's already on the camera control button as soon as you lift, and you can take a snap. That's what I want. There doesn't seem to be anything out there right now. So the case story is still a little bit fluid, so to speak.
Can I offer a prediction, Sigmund?
Go for it.
I think by this time next year, you're going to be carrying your iPhone around in one of those handheld shock mounts that they use to film iPhone commercials with that we see behind the scenes all the time.
It's funny you say that. I have been looking at accessories, mainly from Beast Grip, but not the ones that are designed specifically for models, but the open cage variants that will work with phones down the line. So yeah, it's definitely something we'll talk about another time. Let's talk about this week, because Monday, of course, was a very special day. It was software update day, and for anyone that's into Apple, I think they'll agree, is a day that we all celebrate. More updates than ever this year with new platforms, which we'll get into in a little bit. But it is worth mentioning on this Apple TV podcast that tvOS 18 is now available to everyone to download. Keep in mind some features are going to be restricted to Apple TV 4K second generation and up, but I think everyone's going to find some usefulness in this update, even though unfortunately it doesn't come with everything announced in June at WWDC, which is kind of unprecedented for tvOS. Let's get into what was released with the initial release of tvOS 18 this week. First off, Insight, which is a feature built into the video player that appears during Apple Originals, where you can see who's on screen as well as any music that's playing, and you can check out actor profiles or add that music playing straight to a playlist on Apple Music right from the video player. Very, very cool. We also have auto subtitles when rewinding and when audio is muted, and those subtitles will come into effect based on the language set in the settings on your Apple TV. We also have enhanced dialogue now available across all speaker types, including built-in TV speakers, soundbars, home theater speaker setups, as well as Bluetooth speakers, and when airplaying from iPhone and iPad, and they include both a new boost mode and an isolate mode, which you'll be able to find within accessibility settings. Boost mode really just boosts the dialogue even more, and isolate takes away that background noise so that you can really zone in. It's really quite special. Then we have a redesign of Apple Fitness Plus, where you can get to your favorite workouts even quicker than before. They've really refined Apple Fitness Plus on Apple TV and all platforms every year, and I think we're almost at the stage of perfection there. With Apple Music, you have group share play, where a QR code appears on screen and everyone can quickly join in and choose songs to add to an ongoing active playlist. Very, very cool, because not all members have to be Apple Music subscribers to be able to join in on this. This is something that I think is going to be really good for social gatherings. Just sad that it didn't come before the sun disappeared over here. And lastly, we have new portrait screensavers and navigation between screensaver types by simply swiping up when active on a screensaver, as well as Siri, which is now faster, more knowledgeable, and in some cases processed on device. Now, that's quite a lot, but there are a few omissions, for now at least, and they are 21:9 support for scope projector setups, and who knows, possibly 21:9 displays, so like computer monitors. It's going to be really interesting to see how that works out when that finally arrives. Alongside enhanced dialogue, machine learning, and computational audio support on the HomePod second generation. And lastly, the thing that we're all waiting for, and that is TV and movie-themed screensavers, including themes for Foundation and other Apple originals, as well as Peanuts' very own Snoopy. Yes, Snoopy.
I mean, who doesn't want Snoopy hanging out up on their TV screen when they're not watching TV? I think that's going to be awesome, but we're still keeping an eye out for that screensaver to come in a future update to tvOS.
Indeed. So all of those extras are coming a little bit later, I'd imagine, in the fall, alongside a MacStories review of tvOS 18 by yours truly. This week has been a very, very special week, and today even more so, because not only do we have an iOS and iPadOS review from Federico Viticci with some beautifully crafted artwork by Scout Wilkinson, we also have one of the best watchOS reviews by our good friend Jonathan Reed, and of course John Voorhees' annual macOS MacStories review. And they're all joined today by a very special review. This is the first review of Apple Vision Pro's visionOS. It's crazy to think we were only talking about the release in January, and now we're already at visionOS 2. And that very special review is written by your good self.
Hey, that's me. Yep, I had the opportunity to write the visionOS 2 review this year. It was a huge honor to be asked and a privilege to get to put it together, and I'm so excited to be releasing it today for the world to see.
I've had the privilege of being able to read this. I think I was the first to read it.
You were.
There's just so much in this review that I wouldn't have even imagined. And I'll be honest, when I first realised that you were going to be writing the visionOS review this year, I just thought, where does Devon start? This is a whole new platform. I think you've done an incredible job here. I think readers are going to love this as well as listeners, because not only will you be able to read this on the website, you'll also be able to read it in ebook form as well to take away as a Club MacStories extra. But let's get into it. What was it like reviewing visionOS?
Well, like you said, it was kind of daunting because this is Apple's newest platform. Not a lot of people have had experience with it, so I knew going into it I was going to be writing the review not only for people who are upgrading to visionOS 2, which is what a lot of these OS reviews are about, is about helping people get the most out of these new updates, but also for people who are just kind of visionOS curious and just want to know what's going on with it. And so trying to find that balance was interesting, but you know, at the end of the day, I ended up just kind of approaching it as it was, taking this update, which is actually more substantial than I think a lot of people are giving it credit for, just taking it as it is, breaking down what's new, how that changes the experience of it, but also I think trying to put it in the context of this new paradigm for computing that Apple is entering and is still very much in its early stages. So that was kind of the approach I took to it. I wanted to make it as approachable as possible for people so they could understand what's happening, but also keeping in mind that this is all very new. It could change very quickly. And so what we're seeing now is like a glimpse into it forming, but there's still so much to come.
What's your overall take on this year's update, considering OS 1 only came out in January? So
It's wild that we're even talking about visionOS 2 right now. I wasn't sure that we'd be getting a full-on 2.0 version, but I think that what this update represents really is an iteration, the next step in spatial computing, and the steps here are so foundational in a lot of ways that the changes, while they might seem like they're just kind of day-to-day quality of life things, they actually really do impact your experience of using visionOS, and I think they're going to be these things that we just kind of take for granted with future versions of visionOS and spatial computing. So my takeaway is kind of, again, we're seeing the foundation for spatial computing still being laid, which means things are changing very quickly. And some of these things, you might read a list of features and think, okay, that, you know, there's a new gesture. Okay, so what? But really, that has a huge impact on the day-to-day use of the device. And it's just representative of seeing Apple, this huge company that we're so used to seeing have everything together and, you know, really understand what the direction is they're going. Here, this whole concept is so new that they're still figuring it out, and we're getting to watch it before our very eyes, which I think is awesome.
Now, we've talked about this a couple of times before on the podcast already, about the idea that you actually use Apple Vision Pro in the office pretty much every day, and you get a lot of time in visionOS. But away from the spatial computing element, just for a tad moment, let's talk about the entertainment side of Apple Vision Pro and visionOS 2, and the new additions and some of the things that you pointed out in this review. Because as home theater nerds, that is where a lot of our focus is, or at least it was initially.
Yeah, and I think in that entertainment sense, visionOS 2 just makes the Vision Pro even stronger of a contender in that way. And even though that may not be my primary use case, I still very much benefit from using it to watch video and new types of content as well. So in terms of the video player, Apple is integrating that even more strongly into environments, especially in Safari. So when you're watching a website like Netflix or YouTube, you can now have that video go really wide and watch it on this gigantic display the way you can in the Apple TV app, Disney Plus, apps that integrate with it already. And Apple's also offering that to third-party developers now to integrate into their video players as well. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of those giant screens available to you, which of course is just an incredible way to take in your content. We love big screens, and to be able to have that on Vision Pro with so many different sources is going to be really nice. You can also take Apple Immersive Video now and put it in a window. You can minimize it, which is really interesting because, the whole point of Apple Immersive Video is to surround you 180 degrees with this immersive content that you're taking in, and it unlocks all these experiences. I'm kind of thinking about this in the sense of accessibility for people whom maybe that is not the best way to experience something, or not something they can take in. They can bring it down into this window and watch it more like a regular video, but still get to experience it. And of course, you still got the spatial elements of it. This is something you actually pointed out to me, Sigmund, and I tried myself, and it's so much fun. When you minimize that immersive video down into a window, you can then stick your head through the window and still get that 3D experience. It's really wild. So when you're taking that traditional video player and then combining it with Apple Immersive Video, you can have some pretty fun combinations and new ways to experience things.
It does also kind of make me wonder whether or not immersive video could end up being kind of scaled down to what we've known as traditional 3D on displays. Maybe that's something that does come down the line. Kind of going back to these navigational gestures and how much they have changed from visionOS 1 to visionOS 2, and how much of a positive change they are. I know for me, you've expressed it in the review. It really does actually change in a big, big way. No more kind of like staring up into space.
Yes, trying to activate that control center. I call it a carrot. I don't know if there's a better term for it, but that little arrow where you have to like basically roll your eyes back into your head to try to activate it. I understand the concept, trying to move over from control center on like an iPhone where you pull down from the top. I understand where that idea came from, but I think what they've come up with here is much, much better. The way I put it into context in my review is thinking about Apple and interfaces and the way they have revolutionized interfaces throughout the years. Of course, the big one's multi-touch, right? It just makes so much sense to reach out and touch your computer and be able to pinch and things like that. And so I think they're trying to take that thinking and put it into spatial computing, and I feel like they've really taken some strides with these new navigation gestures. So to go to the home screen, instead of having to reach up and push the digital crown, you can just reach out your hand and look at your palm, and then a little home button will appear and you pinch your fingers together and that'll bring up the home view. Very natural, something I've gotten used to super quickly, and just one of those things that I think makes so much sense and involves so much more movement so that you can kind of just stay in the moment as you're working with your computer. Now, if you're looking at your palm and you flip your hand over, that's when you're going to get into that new control center gesture. You're going to see what's called the status bar, which has the time, battery percentage, some other information there, so you can quickly check the time if you need to. And then if you pinch that, that'll bring up control center, which makes so much more sense than that carrot before. Control Center is something you do spend quite a bit of time in visionOS, so it's handy to have it accessible so quickly. And again, it's just so natural. You flip your hand out, you flip back over, you pinch. It's fun too. Like it just really is a great experience. These new gestures really are great day to day.
It's funny, we talk about some of the other quality of life improvements, the home view customization, right? Now, for anyone that remembers the very, very early days, like I believe the beginning days of the iPhone, they'll have gone through all of this before, because when visionOS 1 was released, there was no modification. The apps were where the apps were, and they were in alphabetical. visionOS 2 changes things.
Yeah, and it makes me so happy because one of the apps that was on the second screen was the one that I use the most. That's Files. I spend a ton of time in Files, and having to swipe over to that second screen every time or use Spotlight was frustrating. So that was the first thing that I changed when I upgraded to visionOS 2, was I put Files on my first home view screen. But moving them around, it's exactly what you'd expect from the iPhone. You go into jiggle mode, you can move them around. You can even take iPad apps that are in that compatible apps folder and put them on the main home view as well, which is also great because I use a ton of iPad apps on my Apple Vision Pro. There's some that just haven't made the jump yet to native visionOS apps. And so having those more easily accessible is great. There's no user customizable folders on the home view, so you can't group them together, but it's still a lot better than it was the step forward. And again, it's one of those things you hear, okay, you can move app icons around, so what? But it really does change the experience day to day and just continues to make the operating system more and more mature and developed, which I appreciate. The other big quality of life improvement this year is keyboard awareness. So you can be in a fully immersive environment and your Magic Keyboard will still pop through. And my tip for this one for people who use it is there's an extra setting in settings to set it to where keyboard awareness only works when your hands are actually near the keyboard. And so you can be fully immersed until you actually need to start typing, and then you put your hands on the keyboard and it just appears. It's such a cool effect. Definitely recommend turning that on if you're going to be using keyboard awareness.
Speaking of the convergence of virtual and physical devices, one of the things that I struggled with early on with Apple Vision Pro was when I got a notification on my phone and not really being able to see it and see that screen in all of its full fidelity. visionOS 2 has a fix for that.
It does. You can turn your Vision Pro into an AirPlay receiver for your other devices, which is really neat. It's not quite as full-featured as Mac Virtual Display. You can't share your inputs like your keyboard and your mouse with the device that's AirPlaying, but you can see your phone screen up there. I've been using it a lot with my iPad Pro in the Magic Keyboard, just getting that screen up there and then using the Magic Keyboard to navigate the iPad Pro. This feature is one that I wasn't sure how much I'd actually use it, but now that I've got it, I've been using it every day. It's really well implemented. It's as solid as you'd expect if you've ever used AirPlay with your Apple TV, which is a feature I also really enjoy. Apple did a great job with it, and I appreciate having that ability. And it's another way to get more software into the Vision Pro, not necessarily running on it, but running on your iPad or your phone. If there's an app you really need to use or a notification you really need to check, you can use AirPlay Receiver as a side door for now as the developer story continues. Speaking of developers, they've got some new tools available this year that I wanted to highlight. These aren't things that users are going to be taking advantage of or maybe even necessarily noticing themselves, but it will impact the types of apps that we're going to see on Vision Pro. And again, we're seeing this platform develop before our eyes. It's still very early days, and so some of these things might seem pretty basic, but they're things we're going to be using a lot in the future of spatial computing, I think. And so it's important and worth noting as we see them come. So we've got Health Kit, the ability for health apps to be available on Vision Pro, which, if you're someone who likes to keep track of your water intake or your heart health or whatever, having it on the Vision Pro is going to be handy as well. Window management, developers have a lot more tools for where windows are placed rather than just having to have them open up right in front of the user. You can kind of make them relative to other windows and set them where you want them, which is great. object tracking, this is really neat. If you check out Apple's sample for this, they have a globe that's sitting on the table in front of you, a physical, like real globe. And then there's a little digital rocket ship orbiting it, and you can interact with it. And so you can use physical objects as anchors for digital experiences in visionOS 2, which I think has a lot of potential for developers and like physical object makers. You could kind of bundle a visionOS experience with your device or whatever it is that you're selling. I think that could be really neat in the future. It opens up a lot of possibilities. And then there's Tabletop Kit, which I'm very excited about because you and I have enjoyed a couple of rounds of chess on Apple Vision Pro via SharePlay, and it's been a lot of fun. And Apple's making it easier for developers to make those types of experiences that are table-based. They're giving them just a lot of the starting points to create their own experiences. So I'm excited to see what kind of board and card games we're going to be seeing come to Vision Pro, because game night's one of my favorite things, Sigmund. And you and I are not going to be getting together in person for game nights anytime soon, but if we could get together on Vision Pro and do that, it's a really nice experience, and it really does feel like we're just hanging out together, which is awesome.
Yes, Devon, but when we do meet in person, we will also get real life photos, not just the virtual screenshots that are in the review. And when we do, I'd imagine we're going to replay all of those memories in Apple Vision Pro, because there are new additions even to photos this year. And one in particular kind of hinted at what we just saw announced last week at the Apple event.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't call that the iPhones are going to be able to take spatial photos based on the spatial photo conversion in the Photos app this year on visionOS. It just makes so much sense. So, of course, Apple Vision Pro, you can experience 3D content in a way you can't on other devices, but there's still not a ton of that content out there. And the tools to create it yourself are still so new that Apple wanted to give us a way to take old memories in the form of photos and turn them into spatial experiences. I have to be honest, I was skeptical about this feature when I saw it in the keynote. I thought there is no way a 2D picture converted to 3D is going to be a good experience. And I was proven so wrong, Sigmund. I love this feature. I can't say enough good things about it. The algorithm that Apple is using to separate the layers in your photos that have no depth data whatsoever. It doesn't matter how old the picture is, what camera it's coming from. This algorithm can separate the subject from the background and truly give you a feeling of depth when you're taking this in. And the effect is visceral when you're looking at old pictures of, family photos, vacations. In my case, baby pictures. I'm extra sappy now because I'm a new dad, and I love those pictures of my kid in 3D. And it just, the best way I can describe it is that it feels like you're reliving that moment for just a second. It really does give you that nostalgic feeling. And you can shift your head ever so slightly, and the perspective will change as if you're really there. You can move the window closer to you, and it'll feel like you're looking through a glass window at a memory. Or you can move the window further away, and the subject will pop through the threshold of the photo window out at you. It's hard to put into words. I tried to capture it as best I could in videos, and the videos fall so short of the experience. I really wish everyone could go to the Apple Store, take their iPhone, AirPlay over some pictures, which I think they'll let you do now, and just experience a couple of your own photos in this format. It really is incredible. And of course, now with the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, you'll actually be able to take spatial pictures yourself, so you can start building up that library and not even have to convert it. But the conversion, I would say, is not a subpar experience. I haven't been able to test actually taking spatial photos with my phone yet to see how those compare. I'm interested to see what the quality difference and the depth difference is like. But this initial version has turned me into a believer. And I'd go in and just convert a handful every once in a while just to re-experience some old memories in this way. And it really is just so much fun.
I gotta say, this was the highlight for me, both of the review and, of course, of my personal experience. I'm hoping next year we see the same, but for video. I have some wild plans if that were to actually happen. But enough of me and what I want. The thing that I really like about your piece this year is that, of course, you're giving an introduction to visionOS and Apple Vision Pro for people that are curious, but also you see the future utility, you see the things that aren't there right now, and you've been brave enough to do something we do always on this show, and that is give a small wish list, which gives me some ideas for later on in the year. What made you decide to kind of end on your wish list for this year? And why not share a couple of your top tier wishes? We don't want to ruin everything.
Of course. I think I had a couple of reasons for wanting to include the What's Next chapter in my review. Number one, I think the biggest theme of the entire review is just how early days visionOS and spatial computing are. And the fact that everything is shifting so quickly means that if you have ideas for the future of the platform, you better get them out now, because now's the time to really be establishing that foundation of what could be. And it's so exciting. And so, there's mature platforms like iOS and iPadOS where we have wishes and we want to see them come, but we also know that those are kind of slow moving ships because they're already so fully formed. But that's absolutely not where visionOS is right now. I think the second reason is the pace of development on the platform is actually so impressive right now. I mean, we're looking at visionOS 2 just 7 months after the release of visionOS 1, which is astounding. And the work that they've been able to do, not only on the user end, but the developer end, is just amazing. And so I put this list out there. It's not even really a wish list. It's almost predictions of things that I truly do believe we're going to see with visionOS 3. And so I said in my review, I would not be surprised at all if a lot of these are checked off by the time we're talking about visionOS and maybe a visionOS 3 review next year. We'll have to wait and see. But I could share a couple, and some of these, again, we're just setting the baseline for the platform, right? So I don't want to see any apps from Apple in that compatible apps folder. You look at an app like Podcasts, and you compare it to the visionOS version of music, and it's like, I want to experience my podcast this way. You look at the iWork suite. Keynote has been brought over to visionOS, and it's awesome on visionOS. I mean, Keynote's just such a good app in general. But I work a lot in Pages, and I'm using the iPad version of Pages, and I want a visionOS version. So I think Apple needs to bring all those over. And of course, that just takes time. They're building the platform and the apps at the same time. And so it takes a while, but I'd like to see them all become native over the next year. I think that multitasking is a bit of an issue in visionOS. It's very much like a build up, tear down, repeat process. Right now, you get your setup just the way you want it with your windows exactly how they're supposed to be. And then you finish your task, you're ready to move on to the next task, but you can't save that setup for the future. So I want something like Stage Manager where you can save arrangements of apps and windows and then move on to the next task, but not have to completely rebuild every time. So those are a couple. There's more in there. I'd say they range from really likely to, I don't know, maybe a little more out there, but I don't think I get too wild in there because I want to be realistic, and I really do want to give the team credit for the work that they're doing. So even though I do have some wishes, I don't want to any way to imply that what they've done with visionOS 2 is lacking, because this is a really impressive update that I had so much fun spending the summer with, and I loved getting to write about and review on the site.
Well, I implore everyone listening to click on the title of this chapter. That will take you straight to MacStories for Devon's visionOS 2 review. It's been an absolute joy to be able to read, but also just to kind of see your writing get to this point. Yeah, very, very, very proud co-host here of Magic Rays of Light. Okay. It's now time for us to talk some Apple TV news, because not only have we had software updates and lots to read, we've also got lots and lots to watch coming up, as well as lots of updates to our favourite apps. But there was one particular that we wanted to highlight this week, And that is the Apple Sports app, which has been updated alongside the release of iOS 18 with 2 features that were previously announced. They are, of course, live activities and a redesigned drop-down menu for quicker navigation. The update also includes a dark mode icon, support for the Campiones Cup, and optimizations for the Women's NBA and the Major League Baseball playoffs. So all very, very cool there. And that's where the positivity starts because, we often talk about price hikes here. We very rarely talk about deals. So through September 27th, new and returning subscribers can sign up for 3 months of Disney Plus's ad-supported tier for $1.99 per month in the US. Disney have talked about the success this week of some of their bundles and how they want to continue to do that, and they're looking at different partnerships. Maybe Apple will be one down the line. I hope so. Fingers are very, very much crossed for that. One of the partners, of course, was Warner Discovery and Max. Most recently, you took advantage of that deal. I'm yet to jump on it, but maybe soon. Well, this week, Charter subscribers have been offered the ability to gain free access to Max's ad-supported tier as part of a new carriage deal between the cable company and Warner Brothers Discovery. Again, the ad-supported tier, which doesn't give you Dolby Atmos, but still fairly good.
I feel like we need some kind of sound to play whenever you bring that up. This is a really interesting trend that we've seen where streaming services are teaming up with traditional cable companies to bundle their streaming services with the cable boxes to reach people who are still connected to that cable line. It's a totally different audience. It's very interesting, and it's a way for companies like Warner Brothers Discovery to sweeten the deal with those traditional cable companies who, of course, aren't necessarily the biggest fans of the shift to streaming, and those terms could be getting tighter, but this is one way to kind of mitigate that.
I guess on this side of the Atlantic, the version that we're having is Sky, who are the satellite company, I believe part of Comcast. They used to have everything, but then their deals are expiring with the likes of HBO, and so a lot of that content's disappearing, and instead they're sweetening the deal by offering free access to Netflix. So these things seem to be happening across the board. And I'd imagine also part of that deal that also sweetens things for the streamers is that they get their shows and their movies front and center to an otherwise traditional audience that's probably looking for something a little more captivating these days, if my experience of linear television's anything to go by. And that brings us to Trailer Talk this week, an Apple original that I've been looking forward to for quite a while through the synopsis. The first German language limited series for Apple. Where's Wanda? After Wanda Klutt goes missing, her family takes matters into their own hands and hatches a wild plan. Spy on the entire neighborhood.
Wanda würde nie einfach abhauen. Sie wurde entführt. Wir durchsuchen alle Häuser in der Umgebung, bis wir sie finden.
Hallo, ich hatte gerade eine Autopanne. Ich vielleicht ganz kurz bei Ihnen telefonieren. Ich bin Pater Schäfer.
Stopp, mach das nicht so boomermäßig.
Hallo. Naja, wir suchen nach Aufnahmegeräten.
Was wollen Sie denn damit machen?
Podcast. Wir können das schaffen, wenn wir ein gutes Team sind.
Ist das eine von meinen Stricknadeln?
Now, this looks like it has plenty of promise. A dark comedy, mystery. I wouldn't call it a thriller based on what we're seeing. Definitely a lot of laughs to be had, I think. Funnily enough, as entertaining as this trailer was, I'm not sure where the overall plot will lead based on the trailer. But whilst maybe not recognisable to a US speaking language audience, the cast is absolutely stacked full of German speaking talent. Depending on how you watch this trailer, you may have not heard those German voices, because something happened this week that I absolutely despise. Before we address in particular that trailer for Where's Wonder, I have a question. If given the choice, do you dub or don't you dub?
I never, ever, ever dub. I always watch in the original language with subtitles because to me, I just want to hear the original performers, and I can catch up with what they're saying by reading. That's personally how I enjoy things that are in another language. How about you?
I'm the same way unless I'm forced to. Yes, I'm very much against dubbing. I have to admit there are times where I'm just too tired to read subtitles, so I have to be in a particular mode to be able to enjoy something with subtitles. But dubbing, it just feels weird. Everything is out of sync. I'm worried that my home theatre's playing up. And again, you're not getting, I feel, and don't get me wrong, there is a purpose for dubbing, from a accessibility point of view, right? And I completely appreciate the art that goes into overdubs and, how that has an effect on international audiences and the content they're able to enjoy that's normally produced in the English language. But one thing that I think is a massive no-no, even, going away from viewers' preference, and that is when you're promoting a show, please, please, please do not put out the dubbed version of the trailer. Allow people to watch it in the original version as you do with the English language titles that you're producing.
Yeah, this reminds me of when they were promoting Losing Alice, and there was one scene in the entire show that was in English, and that featured very prominently in the trailer. And then, of course, the entire series was not in English other than that. And I feel like in some ways it's just not the most honest way to portray these series. I think you need to lean into the fact that this is the first German language Apple original. That's something that I feel like should be promoted, not kind of downplayed by playing the dubbed version of the trailer by default. Now, I'll say I agree with you. The actors who did the dubbing on this trailer did a great job, and for people who enjoy shows that way, it's going to be a great experience. The voices are awesome. But I personally wanted to see the original language version of this trailer, and I was really shocked. Even though you had warned me, I thought it was an option. I didn't realize it was the default option to watch it in English. At least that's how it played for me. And I was baffled by it. So I definitely think that when you're promoting a show, you want to set expectations and be as authentic as possible. And I feel like in this instance, people understand for the most part that a show that's not in your language, you can figure out ways to understand it. But putting out a dubbed trailer from the start, I just feel like it's not true to the original show and the way it was originally made. And yeah, I found this disappointing, and I definitely am going to be watching the show in its original language when it does come out on Wednesday, October 2nd. And I'll say, as much as I'm kind of not happy about the dubbing on the trailer itself is great. I love the whole Red Riding Hood theme of it. I think that's awesome. It looks funny in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting, being a show about these people who are trying to track down their kidnapped daughter. But I think this looks like a very compelling show. And so I'm choosing to kind of lean more into that feeling rather than my distaste for the dubbing on the trailer. And I'm going to be excited for it when it does come out and not let this initial experience kind of get in the way of that.
I do want to very quickly mention that there are audio options on YouTube for the trailer, which is very, very cool. One of the kind of new additions to tvOS 18 is that Apple TV can identify the language that is your preference. And I think what might also be happening there is that in some occasions I've found that it auto switches, even though my preference would always be to watch in the standard language with subtitles. So maybe that's something that can be addressed later on. When it comes to trailers though, I had a bit of an experimental moment this week with this title that is coming to us very, very soon. Another foreign language title coming to Apple TV Plus. It's actually an acquisition that Spanish listeners will be familiar with, as it debuted last year on Disney Plus. The acquisition of the global streaming rights for Tu También Lo Harías, otherwise known as You Would Do It Too. It's a 2023 8-part Spanish language thriller starring Ana Polvorosa and Pablo Molinero. The series takes place after an armed robbery on a bus near Barcelona results in the deaths of 3 robbers. Now, both detectives and former lovers are on a mission to uncover the truth behind 6 witnesses' inconsistent timelines before time runs out. Whilst the series will premiere with 2 episodes on October 30th on Apple TV+, we have yet to see anything other than a couple of stills. I actually checked out the trailer on the Spanish version of Disney Plus and gave it a re-edit minus any dialogue. So there's a fan-made trailer from me up on socials that you can check out to give you a bit of a feel for what the show's about. And maybe that is a way of teasing a foreign language title to an English language market.
Yeah, I thought the trailer that you put together was very effective in communicating what the show's about without any dialogue. And I guess you don't necessarily know for sure that it's a Spanish language series based on the trailer, but you definitely get the vibe of what the show's about, which is great. This looks awesome, the way it's shot. Some of those kind of slow-mo shots on the bus I thought were just really epic. And you read the synopsis and you might think it'd be a kind of typical investigation kind of story, but the way this trailer is shot and done, this looks like something really special, and I can see why Apple picked it up, and I'm excited to check it out.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say this is the first acquisition of this kind by Apple. We saw the similar with Tehran, at least the first season. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any movement in terms of being able to extend beyond this limited series. But yeah, high ratings for every episode. I think they've had 7s across the board. So really looking forward to when You Would Do It Too arrives on Apple TV Plus October 30th with its first 2 episodes. Moving away from streaming for a moment. I guess we're not, but we kind of are. This week sees Wolf's limited theatrical run in the US. And I'm extremely gutted because what I expected to be a limited theatrical run in other big cities across the world, including London, is not to be. No screenings are now expected outside of North America. Instead, Wolves will be going straight to streaming on September 27th. We've had many conversations about Devon, originally slated for a limited theatrical run in territories including the UK and Ireland. There was supposed to be a UK premiere this week. That, from my understanding, is now not happening. And not only that, the film was actually taken off of the release schedule from the Film Distributors Association. But the good news is we've got just over 1 week to wait.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see this one when it comes to streaming, but strange to once again see its theatrical run pulled back even more so. Very, very odd. Another odd one and a disappointing one for both of us, Sigmund. Apple has opted not to renew Time Bandits for a second season on Apple TV+. Despite reports of good reception in the UK, the nostalgia for the original film and the embrace of the new direction for the story didn't translate internationally. Now, we've talked about it. Technically, it's easily one of the best audio and video presentations of the year in streaming. It's disappointing not to see it continue, but I'd still say it's a story worth visiting if you haven't yet. We both very much enjoyed the first season. So now we know that that's the only season, but Time Bandits can be viewed in full across all of your screens on Apple TV+. And we'll have to enjoy that one and just imagine what a second season could have been.
In terms of development, we haven't got much in development news. I've heard murmurs of some second seasons for shows that are upcoming, including the upcoming show where John Hamm takes the lead role. But This week, The Hollywood Reporter shared that the long-awaited adaptation of S-Town could now be coming to Apple TV Plus as a limited series. This is, of course, the 2017 non-fiction podcast series centered around an oddball genius antique clock restorer and his complex relationship with his rural Alabama community. At the height of the podcast's popularity, it clocked over 16 million downloads in its first week and then 40 million in its first month. We've got some way to go, Devon. Of course, that also led to some critical acclaim and a Peabody Award as a result. So why has this project been in limbo for all of these years? Well, put quite simply, the podcast was the subject of some controversy, with conversation around whether its subject, John B. McLemore, no, not that McLemore, had adequately consented to the project after he died by suicide in the early stages of reporting, with the podcast criticised at the time by some for perceived invasive coverage of intimate details of McLemore's life. Now, from the report, Damages and Bloodline co-creator Daniel Zellman is attached to develop the project. I still am very, very much in love with The Shrink Next Door, which is still one of my favourite limited series on Apple TV Plus. Probably one of my favourite limited series of the last 5 or 10 years, I would say, in streaming. And there's a lot of competition there. So what do you think of the potential for this podcast adaptation?
Well, I remember when this one came out, it was a pretty big deal in kind of the wake of Serial and how big that show was. This was like the follow-up to that. This is from Serial Productions. And so I remember it being a huge conversation piece at the time, and I could see it translating well to a series now that the lawsuit has been settled. So I'm all about taking these stories that have captivated people as podcasts and turning them into series. So I think this could be good if it does pan out. It's kind of just a rumor right now, but we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, if a podcast wins a Peabody Award, that probably means it would make a good series, right?
Indeed. And talking of awards, it was a big awards week this past week for Apple Originals. The Toronto International Film Festival awarded this year's NetPack Jury Award to The Last of the Sea Women, which made its world premiere at Toronto International Film Festival the week prior. Of course, streaming to all screens on Apple TV Plus on October the 11th. And whilst we had the Creative Emmys last week, this was the week where all the glitz and glam happened. All the cameras came out, and Apple Originals bagged not one, but 2 Primetime Emmy Awards.
Yes. Of course, we saw Billy Crudup from The Morning Show win Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. His second time to win the award and his third time to be nominated, so congratulations there. And then Will Smith, writer of Slow Horses, won Outstanding Writing for a Drama Series. We're big fans of Slow Horses and the writing on that show, so it's awesome to see it honored in this way. Congratulations to both of them and all the winners at this year's Primetime Emmy Awards.
A highlight for me of the Primetime Emmy Awards was Will Smith saying, "Don't worry, it's an award show, but I come in peace." You'd have never thought that he was a stand-up comedian prior to his writing and his creator role on Slow Horses. But he was. So very, very cool to see. This week's releases on Apple TV include yet another episode of that fantastic series, Slow Horses, alongside new episodes of Women in Blue and Bad Monkey. And on Friday, we see the North American limited theatrical release of Wolves, which we'll be talking about on next week's show ahead of its streaming debut. Another show that we will be talking about next week, that we were hoping to be talking about this week, is the 2-episode premiere of La Maison. This is a superb show. Sadly, the embargo is set for the day of its premiere, which gives very little time for the word to get out, but we will be sure to remind you to tune in every week because it's that good. And the season runs through November 15th, so we'll have plenty of opportunity to sing its praises. And talking of singing its praises, we'll continue to do the same with Pachinko, which also sees a new episode this Friday.
Friday Night Baseball has its final evening of the season this Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Detroit Tigers take on the Baltimore Orioles. The Philadelphia Phillies take on the New York Mets. And on Saturday and Sunday, MLS Season Pass continues. Of course, if you're an Apple TV Plus subscriber, you can watch those games included with your subscription for the rest of the season, including the playoffs and the finals coming up. Very cool perk there. For extras this week, we've got a couple for you. La Maison, an inside look, little glimpse inside the series before it debuts on Friday. And the Emmys 2024 Portrait Studio, shot on iPhone 16 Pro by Ahmad Barber and Dante Maurice, aka ABDM Studio. These are always fun. Apple put this together, and it's cool to see the stars of some of these shows that we talk about all the time getting together as themselves, of course, not the characters, but getting to see them in different styles and just goof off and have fun as they celebrate the amazing work that's being done in the TV industry.
That's a big week. But a couple of weeks ago, we saw a very, very big week for one particular show, which saw its finale. And that, of course, this week is our recap of Sunny. And spoiler warnings ahead. If you have not yet caught up, please skip this chapter and come back at your listening pleasure. Sunny sees the life of an American woman living in Kyoto, Japan, upended when her husband and son disappear in a mysterious plane crash. As consolation, though, she's given Sunny one of the new class of domestic robots made by her husband's electronics company.
My family was in a plane crash. Things have been,
Hajimemashite, Suzy-san.
weird.
I'm Sunny.
Okay.
Sunny was created by your husband.
Did you really know my husband?
My first memory is meeting you.
Suzy-san, they want something from you.
I'm gonna find out what happened to my family.
Maybe I could help figure this out.
What are you hiding from me?
This show comes to us courtesy of A24 from creator Katie Robbins. It's directed and executive produced by Lucy Cherniak and starring Rashida Jones, Hidetoshi Nishijima, Joanna Sotomura, Jun Kunimura, and others. Simeon, can you give us a quick plot summary?
Absolutely. So, Susie's husband, Masa, and son Zen are presumably killed in a plane crash, leaving her grieved and alone, where she is consoled with a gift of a home robot named Sunny that her husband was working on without her knowledge. Initially, she's resistant to Sunny's presence, and Susie eventually builds this relationship with the bot as the two team up to uncover what really happened to her family. Susie learns from a new friend named Mixie about the Dark Manual, which is a black market guide for hacking bots that can be tied to Masa's disappearance. The Yakuza are also on the hunt for the Dark Manual and believe Sunny could be the key to unlocking its potential for destruction. But as Susie falls further down the rabbit hole, she discovers the true nature of her husband's work and finds her son alive in the Yakuza's grasp. In an attempt to escape, Susie entrusts Sunny to her friend Mixie, who, in the season's final moments, is revealed to have ulterior motives of her own. What a season. Just very, very quickly, before we go into performances and everything, the overall tone of this show is so bizarre. It shifts in so many different ways. This is very much a show that you could link back to being, an A24 Apple original production. I think overall, kind of looking back on this show, I'm really, really hopeful that this is given time to breathe and find its audience. Although I believe, there was an audience week by week, much like Severance. This is a show that I think is going to grow a massive cult following. This isn't the first time we've seen Rashida Jones on Apple Originals. Of course, On the Rocks and a brief cameo in Silo. She's absolutely fantastic in this.
She really is. She's taking on, I think, a really complex role. This character with a history that we don't totally understand. We start to see glimpses of throughout the season. But of course, where we meet her is in the wake of losing her husband and son. And I think Rashida Jones' performance from the very first moment of the show just is so powerful. That very first shot where you see her just biting the heads off the Santa cookies and then putting them down and grabbing another Santa cookie, and then she goes back to grab more just so she can bite the heads off of them. It's like, okay, we see where this character is at in her life right now. We see her attitude, and it really is just that embodiment of grief and how she's dealing with it, and mixed with, of course, her personality, which is just a very interesting one from the get-go. I think the thing that made me really feel for Susie the most, beyond that initial conversation where she's trying to, deal with what's going on with her husband and son going missing, is seeing her sleep in her son's bedroom. And then the moment towards the middle of the series when she realizes someone has broken into her home, and the first thing she checks, of course, is her son's bedroom because she wants it just the way it was. And she's horrified to see that it's been turned over. Just seeing her as a mother dealing with the loss of her son in that way, I think it was so powerful. I think she portrayed that so well. Rashida Jones did an incredible job of that. And of course, we see Susie carry on through her grief, trying to make sense of what's happened to her. So there's this power to Susie as well. In the midst of that grief and the grumpiness and even a little bit of being kind of off-putting to other people in a lot of ways, there is still that perseverance that we see in her that I think Rashida Jones embodies so well. And we see that perseverance grow, I think, through the relationship between Susie and Sonny, where Susie absolutely does not want this home robot in her home. We established very early she's not a fan of bots. She doesn't want them around her. And this one in particular that seems to have some kind of connection to her husband, who she believes to be passed away, she's just not interested in having a relationship with this robot at all. And just as she's about to call it quits with Sonny, Sonny reveals this hand motion that only Masa would have known, right? That Sonny must have learned from him. And so she gets this reconnection with her lost husband through this homebot that I think is really beautiful to see, and to see that relationship continue to grow. Over time, these two develop trust and protectiveness over one another. It's not one-sided, right? You see that on the robot side as well, just this instinct to protect Susie in a way that I would maybe even call human. I think this relationship between the two of them is very deep and complex, and it's nothing like my relationship with Siri, which I describe as probably cold as best. Susie really does come to care for Sonny the way that Sonny does care for her as well. And what we see is Susie forming a new family in the wake of losing her previous one. It's not the family she imagined, right? It's a robot and a bartender that she met named Mixie. But together they form this little troupe. They support one another, and they have these dynamics between them that I can only describe as familial, right? And I think it's really cool to see. Again, you've got this AI robot in the mix, but there's these very human-like connections between them. I think the show did that really effectively and treated Sonny as a character, not an object or even a story element. She really is a person, might be a strong word, but she's a character for sure.
I think we often say this on the show, but one of the strongest characters of this whole Sonny show is Japan itself, right? And the different cultural aspects of this world that we're visiting through these 10 half-hour episodes. There's also kind of an interesting take on, a Westerner coming in to Japan and the cultural shifts there as well. There's an element of what was originally in Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation that's repeated here. And I think it's really interesting because we do have very different kind of cultural understandings and our connections to different things. And I think AI is probably going to be a bigger part of it. Because right now, and I thought this was hilarious, I actually Googled Sunny Robot, trying to see if someone had made some kind of replica of the Sunny Robot from this show. They hadn't. But there are actually robots that you can get called Sunny, which I thought was amazing. And they are actually supposedly, I think, still quite niche, but to a point quite popular in Japan already.
Wow. I guess we're living in that robot AI future already. I think it is really interesting the role of AI in this show because you don't totally understand what Sunny is from the beginning. You get a sense from the very opening of the show that something bad has happened in Sunny's past, that something violent took place with one of these bots of her type. And so you get this kind of overall eeriness, I think, towards her. At any point that something could go wrong, she could just go off and do something horrific. And you even see glimpses of that when she's defending Susie and goes way too far physically with other people. But really, when you get back to Sunny's creation and we flash back to what Masa was doing in developing her, it's really incredible, I think, and so poignant that Sunny was created as a companion. Mm-hmm. Her whole purpose was to solve the issue of loneliness, which is a huge theme throughout this show. Of course, Susie's loneliness after losing her family, which is what Sunny comes in and tries to address, but also Masa's loneliness before the events of the show, where he spends so much time alone in his room, not interacting with other people, and it's actually connections with bots that helps get him out of that and back connecting with other people. And that's actually something that we've talked about on this show before with The Friend.
We have.
Using AI as sort of not only a way to cope with loneliness, but also as a stepping stone back towards human connection, and making itself obsolete eventually because you're able to create those connections with human beings again. And so I thought that was such an interesting take on this whole AI conversation. And again, we had this whole product that came out. It's very much a precursor, I think, to what Sunny is in the show. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on what did you think about that turn in the show, that reveal of what Sunny was really for?
I thought it was very poignant. There are subjects that writers constantly trying to tackle, right? It's why we love film and why we love TV and different kind of takes on the things that we go through in life, right? And so it doesn't surprise me at all that Sunny was a companion. I think, on that first episode where Susie leaves Sunny on the bridge and then Sunny finds its way back, I think that was very, very key early on that was the case. And I never thought that the reveal that Masa was working on this robot, and of course Susie doesn't like robots, that was ever going to be like a nefarious thing. Mm-hmm. I always believed that Masa was a good person, although, we can talk about whether or not that good person is still around. I think we have different takes on that. I think it's good to be able to see like the good potential in AI. There's a lot that AI threatens that we can get down on, but I think the healthy balance that is shown and the use of it in this show is pretty special. I want to talk about the future of the show. A lot of revelations at the end. I do want to talk about Masa very, very quickly, because, of course, his whereabouts are unknown, but at least to me, clearly the narration all throughout the finale was from Masa, right? So he is still alive, I'd imagine, because otherwise how is he telling the story?
I guess I pictured the narration being from that video the couple episodes before where he was narrating what Sunny was about, but I mean, you're totally right. I hadn't thought about the fact that he's also narrating the finale, which very much implies that he is around somewhere. And I guess the question then would be, well, where is he? What's he been up to? And does the Yakuza have him? Because they also had to go pretty hard after Susie as well to try to get into his computers and stuff. So yeah, lots of questions about what's going on with him, and very interested to see where they go with that in the season 2. Of course, very, very happy to see Zen is safe and sound and back with his mother. I think that gave the season, while it was a bit of a mixed ending with some of the reveals, I think seeing Susie and Zen back together, I think very much was satisfying, and it made me happy anyway. 2 characters who aren't together at the end of the season are Susie and Sunny, because Susie has entrusted Sunny to Mixie to go be worked on. And we find out in that very last moment that Mixie has her own motives. She's actually been trying to abduct Sunny throughout the season and succeeds in those very last moments. We don't know what she's doing with Sunny, but we know that she's not who we thought she was.
Yeah, I thought the whole portrayal of Mixie was fantastic throughout this season. I did always have a few doubts, to be quite honest with you, but the portrayal is incredible, especially for a first time debut for a narrative role like this by YouTuber Annie the Clumsy, which I had no idea of until right after the finale. I was like, okay, who is this actress? And wow, a standout performance. But of course, we have to end on the vocal talents of Joanna Sotomura, who plays Sunny on the show. And I would almost say that on this second season, hopefully, that we will get, she's going to play a compromised robot. A bit of a loose cannon.
Yes. I mean, it turns out that the Yakuza's plan the entire time was sort of to infect Sunny with this code that would eventually lead her to where she could commit violence, and she's shown that she's capable of that now. And I loved that whole episode where we were inside her head and she was trying to decide whether or not to reset herself as like a protective measure, and ultimately decides that her purpose to protect Susie is more important than getting past whatever this has been done to her. And so I thought that was really, really cool. But at the same time, now we don't know what she's capable of, and we don't know how much more she can or has been manipulated. So that's going to be very interesting. But a character that, again, I think really won me over this season, just in the portrayal of a robot in the most personable way I've ever seen. And a character that I'm excited to see in a season 2 if one does come. I'm very much hoping it does. That's our recap for the week. Lots of Apple originals to check out. But of course, we always like to end the show with some recommendations of other titles you can check out in the TV app. We've got a nice list of TV app highlights this week. Sigmund, where do you want to start?
I mean, it is a crazy week for streaming this week. Literally every day there's something. So right now we have 2 films that I highly, highly recommend. Both recently coming out of theatres. Blink Twice stars Channing Tatum as a tech billionaire who meets a cocktail waitress named Frida at a fundraising gala where sparks fly. But once he invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on his private island, the paradise and wild nights blend into sun-soaked days, and everyone's having a great time, at least from what they know. A really, really crazy thriller. It's the directorial debut of Zoe Isabella Kravitz, who was in The Batman as Catwoman. Highly, highly recommend it. It also stars Naomi Aki and Christian Slater, amongst others. Also in the TV app, another thriller/horror, and that is Cuckoo from Neon, about a 17-year-old who leaves her American home to live with her father, who has just moved into a resort in the German Alps with his new family. But when she arrives at the future residence, something doesn't quite seem right, and lots of strange things happen. I will say no more about this film. I think the less you know going in, the better. But the trailer had me on tenterhooks, and of course you can check that out by clicking the link in the show notes. Now, when it comes to Disney Plus titles and Marvel titles, I know this is one that you'll be excited for, Devon. We finally get the spin-off show that I've been waiting for because I love the reveal and the turn in WandaVision. Of course, I'm talking about Agatha All Along, which makes its debut with Kathryn Hahn playing the titular role. Very, very excited for this.
Yeah, and also features Aubrey Plaza as well. So I can't wait to see this one. I'm a fan of anything Marvel, but this one in particular I think is going to be something really fun and perfect for spooky season.
On Thursday, we see the premiere of The Penguin on Max. This is the Batman spin-off about the transformation of Oswald Cobblepot from a disfigured nobody to a noted Gotham gangster. It stars Colin Farrell in the title role, and it's directed by Compliance and the Hunt director Craig Zobel. This is a spin-off from the Matt Reeves Batman film from a couple of years ago. Has very much the same kind of stylings, and we've said this before about Colin Farrell and how he can transform in many different ways, especially earlier this year on Apple TV Plus with Sugar. But he's absolutely unrecognizable in this. And this is one of the reasons why I did upgrade my tier to Max, ready for this premiere. We also see on Thursday the Season 2 premiere of The New Frasier on Paramount Plus, with Kelsey Grammer reuniting with more guest stars in the second season revival of the classic sitcom. And that's followed by a very royal scandal on Prime Video, where Ruth Wilson and Michael Sheen star in a dramatised version of Prince Andrew's disastrous interview on the BBC, as he tries to deflect from accusations that have seen him twisting in the wind ever since. On Friday, we have His Three Daughters on Netflix, Omniloop, which is both premium VOD in the TV app and with a limited theatrical run. The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, which looks fantastic and very, very British, about a older gentleman who decides he hasn't done enough with his life and he's going to go and check on a friend, but he's going to walk there to the other side of the country. And it looks so heartwarming. I think this is one that definitely should be on your list, Devon. And finally, we get the streaming premiere of I Saw the TV Glow on Max. So many good things I can say about this. Definitely a cult classic in the making for the LGBTQI+ community and allies. And lastly, on Saturday on Netflix, one that I can definitely associate with because of my love of lasagna, and that is the Garfield movie, starring some amazing voices, including Ted Lasso's very own Brett Goldstein. So a packed week on the TV app. But this week, because of the lack of theatrical run for Wolves, we wanted to give you a couple of reasons to get out to your local theatres and support film in the public setting. So, Devon, what have you got for us for our up next theatrical pick this week?
My pick is Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, a documentary about Christopher Reeve and his amazing life. Of course, you get to see clips of him as Superman, which is always awesome, but also hear from his family and friends, including Glenn Close, who features prominently in the trailer, about the things he achieved off the screen, including his advocacy and just what an amazing person that he was. Very inspiring story, and one that I look forward to seeing. It's in U.S. theaters on September 21st and the 25th, and that 25th showing is in honor of what would have been his 72nd birthday. In the UK, it won't be available in theaters until November 1st, but if you're in the U.S. and want to check this out, it's a very limited run. Looks like an awesome documentary that you'll want to check out in theaters. So that's my pick for this week. What have you got for us, Sigmund?
Well, we're going from Superman to A Different Man. This is a A24 film that's coming to theatres in the US and very soon to the UK in October. It's about an aspiring actor named Edward, played by Sebastian Stan, who undergoes a radical medical procedure to drastically transform his appearance. But his new dream face quickly turns into a nightmare as he loses out on the role he was born to play and becomes obsessed with reclaiming what was lost. And the wonderful thing about this is, alongside Sebastian Stan and Renate Reinsve, is Adam Pearson, who plays Oswald. Here's someone that in my 20s, I used to serve at the Black Sheep Bar in Croydon. He has had a number of roles in that time, including starring roles alongside the likes of Scarlett Johansson. And it's been an absolute joy to see him do the press tours recently. And what makes him special is just how joyful and how vibrant and exuberant and well thought he is in his intentions, both in acting and his activism, because he has neurofibromatosis, which is a little bit like how has it been described as like the modern day Elephant Man type visual to him, and he's really played that into his roles to allow for acceptance. I've heard that this role is extremely funny, and I cannot wait to see it myself. But yeah, such a darling guy. Really, really special person. I'm seeing the tomato meter at 84% already, so very, very well deserved upcoming success for him. And yeah, it comes as my recommendation for going to theatres this week. A Different Man alongside Superman. Who would have known it? We have by accident caused a theatre double bill of very, very different proportions.
Yeah, but two great reasons to get out to the theaters and support your local cinema this weekend. Well, that's all from us this week. Thank you so much for listening. We hope everyone is enjoying the new software updates. Everyone who's getting new hardware this weekend, we hope you have so much fun with it. Of course, one last time, be sure to check out all of our coverage over at MacStories. Lots of amazing stuff going on over there this week, so be sure to check that out. We always want to hear your feedback, so you can reach out to us on social media via the links in the show notes, or you can send us an email or an iMessage to magic@macstories.net.
We'll be back next week with the debut of Midnight Family and the streaming premiere of Wolves. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.